into this week's
Before you,
release.
before you go into that week's release, fun
Oh,
fact, did you know
yeah.
that for Wally and his sisters, they had the perfect clubhouse on their property? And do you know what that clubhouse was made out of?
It was the C-82.
It was the C-82
Right.
Boxcar.
It was the C-82. Let me tell you, I had a fight for the C-82. So that's this week's release. We got the new C-82
Yeah.
plane tag from the Soplata family. This is one I had to really fight for. I love this plane. Look, I'm a fan of the C-119 Flying Boxcar. I just love how boxy they are. Um, and they would not let me have that C-82. And they were going to, make it back into a clubhouse. Then they were talking about making an Airbnb out of it. And finally, the last trip up there to Ohio, they agreed to sell us a clamshell door in the back. And
Hmm.
so we brought the clamshell door back to our studio here in Torrance, and where it sits in our backyard. And I didn't want, I mean, it's so beautiful. The structure of that clamshell door is so amazing that we actually drilled out all the rivets. And so the structure still sits in the backyard. So if you ever come to Plane Tags, we'll go in the backyard. We can show you the back section of the C-82. Uh, but yeah, getting to what you said, that was their clubhouse, and that's where they grew up at, and that's why they had so many memories in that C-82. Um, but I think it's just so funky, Rob. It's like one of my favorite aircraft.
C-119. Obviously, the C-119 is a derivative of the C-82 because the C-82 had some issues in service, but they're pretty cool aircraft to see a big old boxy twin boom aircraft.
Yeah. Well, the downside is it's a limited run. We only have, I think, 1,700 in the series. Definitely one that you're going to want for your collection. It just lots of aviation history here. So I'm proud to have the Soplata name on it. We have a couple more in our back pocket from the Soplata family that we'll be introducing throughout the next couple of years. But look, that was great from the Soplatas. We had access to aircraft that we were never going to have access to, and I my only wish is that we had gotten there a couple years before and had an opportunity maybe to get some more stuff. But we did walk away with probably a dozen aircraft
Yeah.
from there. So we got a couple more in our back pocket here that we're going to be releasing at a later time.
Okay. So let's get into a little bit of the history of the C-82.
Okay.
The development of the C-82 began in 1942. At the time, it was the U.S. Army Air Forces that needed a large capacity transport for airborne operations. So Fairchild Aircraft was asked to come up with a prototype, which they did, and that prototype flew in 1944. It featured the twin boom layout, which is the two tails on the backside, and it was a
Right.
double engine. And then the big old carrying cargo pod was able to carry troops, cargo, palletized cargo, trucks, etc. So they were pushed into service to the U.S. Army Air Forces, which later became the United States Air Force. But they were too late for World War II because World War II had just ended. But they were used a little bit in the Berlin airlift. However, they weren't heavily relied upon because the C-82 had, unfortunately, a limited capacity with the engines.
Mm-hmm.
They realized pretty quick that if they lost an engine and they were full load, that the aircraft itself couldn't sustain flight and it would go down.
Wow.
Not meaning it would just fall the sky. It couldn't maintain level flight, so it would start to sink towards the ground. Unfortunately, due to that, they lost a lot of the C-82s because they crashed because of engine issues.
How many? How
Um,
many? How many did they make?
223 were made in total.
Wow, that's not a big number.
Um, no, it's not, but it's because they realized they were having all these issues with them, that they stopped production on them, which then introduced the production of the C-119 Flying Boxcar,